There's a dangerous assumption that senior leaders make that when they walk away, their leadership will live on. But if the culture, execution, and performance you've helped build can't survive without your direct input, you haven't built a legacy. You have built a dependency instead. And in this episode, we're getting brutally honest about succession, leadership transfer, and why your organization may be thriving just on the surface, but bleeding internally. So, this isn't just about preparing your next person. This is about whether your thinking, strategy, and systems are transferable. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that you take the Leadership Intelligence Index. It is not a personality quiz, it is a clarity diagnostic that it reveals the gaps between how you lead and how your culture scales without you. And if you're holding on tighter than you should, then this tool shows you why. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remarkable Edge Live Show. This is the Executive Power Series. I'm your host, Dr. Bernita Glenn White. I go by Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist and Master Recalibration Strategist for brilliance, authority, and precision. I'm an executive advisor and leadership intelligence architect for high stakes organizations. So I don't just coach or consult, but I do systematize transformation. And from education and systems to enterprise teams, I spent 20 plus years helping leaders close the execution gap and build intelligent ecosystems that scale. So this show is where bold execution meets intelligent design and where elite professionals come to rethink leadership, realign performance, and build organizations that actually work. So if you're done playing by outdated rules and ready to architect results that drive revenue, retention, and real influence, let's get to work. So let's talk about the leadership erosion and succession. So leadership development programs are everywhere. Yet succession failures continue to stall growth. And I have several degrees in leadership. I've been in several leadership professional development programs, and I've consulted with a few organizations who have built those type of leadership programs, and the same things keep happening. They keep people switching, but the problems are staying the same. But here's the truth. You don't have a next level leader problem, most likely. But you probably do, and I guarantee that this is true, that you have a transfer system problem. So when you have the initiatives that stall, your teams are paused, or your performance drifts the moment that you step away, that happens because your presence is still in the control switch. And here's an insight that I want you to keep in mind. If your vision requires your physical presence to function, it is not scalable, it is rented. And where you're gone, the lease is up. And this just goes back to a previous episode where we talked about being remote, that you can still have the power and presence as a leader without being in a physical location. And if you're already a remote company or organization, this still applies to you, and we'll take a deeper dive into that. So some of you may be involved in this emotional trap, and then you're probably figuring out, well, I'm a high level leader. What is it about what I'm doing that I'm still holding on to things, and why we're not growing or scaling how I envisioned it? So we're going to talk about ego, but not the inflated type of ego. And ego gets a bad rap sometimes. So it's not always the inflated part. This is the side where no one really wants to talk about, but it's the protective side of the ego, because the ego is also there to protect us. So you have probably poured decades into building something that is meaningful. It is your baby. It is what you cultivated over the years. It is something that you want to last beyond you. And even if it's not your actual company, you may be leading that, and you put some things in place that you want to see continue to move forward. But that desires, it often leads to you over functioning, and you are left with reviewing every single plan. You're staying involved just in case, and you're choosing safe successors who won't challenge your legacy. Let me know if you've been guilty of that. If you don't want to leave in the comments, you can DM me secretly. But you know the truth. Like, you're picking people to go ahead of you because you know they won't change anything. And you have to ask yourself, is that true legacy building? But you have to understand that that's not about succession. That is fear management. And you have to be honest with yourself. Like, are you putting succession plans in place, or are you operating out of a place of fear? So you have to understand that you don't need a clone. You have to realize you don't need a clone and you shouldn't want a clone, but you do need continuity. But continuity requires courage and it also requires structure. So let's ground this in a real world scenario and how leadership dependency at the top can be a not so great thing. So in 2022 and 2023, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon faced intense internal criticism over his leadership and the firm's costly expansion into consumer lending. So suspecting leaks to the press, he was like, there's a mole in here. Solomon initiated internal probes and pushed out high-level critics, including longtime executives Jim Exposito and Ed Emerson. Those those departures reinforced Solomon's control, but also highlighted a significant issue: the organization's over-reliance on a single leader's presence and his decisions. And you can go read more about that in the Wall Street Journal and some of their articles. So this situation underscores a critical point. If your leadership model requires silencing dissent to maintain control, it is not sustainable. It is fragile. So you have to ask yourself, are you more concerned about silencing those people who speak out, or do you want something that's sustainable? You can't have both. So true legacy involves building systems and cultures that thrive beyond individual leadership by fostering environments where diverse perspectives are valued and succession is a strength and not a threat. So you have to ask yourself, do I truly value the people that I'm bringing into this organization and their opinions, or do I want just to have a diverse, kind of sea of people without listening to what they have to say? So you have to be honest with yourself about that. So one way to work through that is to look at legacy by design and using a simple framework. So this is where you stop thinking about succession as just a baton pass. This is not a relay race where we're passing the baton, but instead start treating it like a strategic architecture. So you have to stop thinking you have to start thinking, like I said, in terms of legacy by design, not just passing it on to the person that I want to be in control. So here are some questions to ask yourself in 3 areas. Area number 1 is clarity of leadership philosophy. What do you believe about ownership? What do you believe about risk? What do you believe about feedback? And what do you believe about authority? This is a philosophy I know when I was teaching at the university level, I had to create a teaching philosophy and a research philosophy and a scholarship philosophy. What did I believe about those areas? So the same thing in leadership. What do you believe about the areas of ownership, risk, feedback, and authority? And then still within that category, ask yourself this question: have you made that visible in writing? So all of your beliefs about those things, and there could be more, but at least start with those things. Have you made that visible in writing? Have you said it in meetings? And have you put performance models in place that demonstrate what you want to see in those areas? The second area for you to focus on, for you to ask yourself these questions, is what makes your results repeatable? So if we're talking about succession and building legacy by design, you yourself, you have to know what makes your results repeatable, whether it is your own business or if you are the CEO of the organization. You're in that position for a reason, and there are things that you put in place, but are they in place because of who you are as a person, or are they in place and sustainable because they can be repeated by someone else? And then ask yourself, have you built decision trees, scorecards, or workflows that outlive your management style? So can someone come in and say, oh, I see exactly how you want this to happen, then I can pick this up and then move forward? Or if you are away from whatever you're deciding to do, the decision can still move forward without you. And the third and final area that I want you to consider and ask yourself these questions is replication of thinking. Replication of thinking. So ask yourself, can your team anticipate how do you think through high stakes decisions? That's why you are the CEO. That's why you are the owner. That's why you are at the top, because of the way that you're thinking, hopefully. So, but can your team, have they seen you enough? Can they say, you know what, such is not in the office. I know that they will want me to move forward in this way, because I see how they navigate through this decision-making process, and we feel comfortable taking a step without them always emailing you or calling you. That is why you're the leader. You put those things in place. That's why you make the big bucks, right? But it doesn't make sense if you have to be there, and then you wonder why you are burnt out, don't want to be here, hate your job, hate your company, hate whatever, because you haven't taken the time to replicate your thinking. And then ask yourself, is your logic trainable, or is it just stuck in your head? Is your logic trainable, or is it just stuck in your head? So the gap isn't in the people, the gap is in the infrastructure. So I know from my experience as an educator, this is where I've helped a lot of organizations, and think of it as high level sub plans. And that's what I had to think. Like, I knew how to do it in the education system, but how do I do this in corporate and enterprise? And I had to think about it as high level sub plans. So one example, or two examples, you take a good teacher and a good principal. They can run their classrooms and they can run their schools. And then when I worked at the higher level, they can run their districts like well-oiled machines, because they have these things in place while they're there. So those were the good ones. Now the great ones and the phenomenal teachers, principals, and high-level administrators like area superintendents, they were the ones who could walk away, go to trainings, take vacations, do something else, and still let their classroom, schools, and districts still run like a well-oiled machine, whether there was a substitute coming in, whether it was the assistant principal, or whether there was another executive director coming in and overseeing what was happening at the district. Same thing in corporate. If you are the CEO or in the C-suite for any of those things, do you have quote unquote high level sub plans in place for people to come in and everything still moves forward without them blowing up your phone or sending you 1,000 emails? So you have to ask yourself those questions, and then that shows that you have repeatable systems in place. So if this is hitting you a little too close to home and you're realizing like, oh my gosh, this is why I've been feeling the way I've been feeling, or I've been upset with the people for not being able to handle certain things, but I take it on me. Now I see where I haven't been the true leader. That means that means that you actually care, and you're not in the business of just blaming people. Now sometimes there are some people who are just messing up, right? But for the most part, you take a look at yourself as a leader, say, you know what, I have not done a great job at this. So that means that you actually care, and that is where you can start building your legacy by design. But you have to understand that care without clarity, that is what is building the dependency. That is why the people are still leaning on you, because they know that you care, but you haven't been clear about what you want them to do. So my suggestion to you is to start with the Leadership Intelligence Index, the diagnostic tool that reveals where your leadership isn't just influential, but indispensable, but in the wrong ways. And so the LII touches on 5 different pillars of the leadership ecosystem mastery that I've developed. So area number 1 is strategic intelligence and decision mastery. Now, these are just 10 questions. This is surface level, but it gets you pointing at the dot of where you are, like you are here. And you can take that information to go back with your team, or we can have a strategic conversation about what are your next steps. But at least take it to see and open up your eyes, so you're not just running around trying to fix every single thing. It'll give you a focus in these 5 areas. So strategic intelligence and decision mastery. Area number 2 is scalable leadership structures. Area number 3 is what I like to call leadership content knowledge and industry fluency. And that is about understanding what you are focusing on in your industry, but through the lens of your leadership. So like if you're a manufacturing, but then you have to go in as a leader, understanding manufacturing, but through the lens of a leader, even if you don't know every single thing about manufacturing. And I could do a deeper dive on that if you want. And then the 4th area is AI and digital adaptability, but without the hype. So yes, I'm saying AI because that's the area that we're in, but then also any type of other technology or digital presence that's going to come in and help your company. See where you are with that. And then number 5, talent optimization and retention systems. So those are just a starting point to see how you are leveling up or where you need to focus on for your leadership. And so if you're not sure where to start, let's have a precision performance call where we can pinpoint to see if you or your leaders need support in their transferring, in the way they're transferring their thinking, codifying performance systems, or scaling culture. So there are 2 things. So let me make sure I say that clearly. You can take the Leadership Intelligence Index for those 5 areas to see where you are measuring up, and then you will get immediate feedback, and then it'll categorize you into your next steps. But then if you're like, I've taken that, or I don't I don't think those are the areas of concerns. Then we can have a call in the three areas about transfer thinking, codifying performance systems, or scaling culture, because all those things are dependent. All those things matter when you're thinking about building your legacy by design. And then when I say succession, that doesn't mean that you're exiting your role or selling your company or leaving your business tomorrow. But you still want to have a plan in place, just like the sub plans back in the day when I was working in the school system. You already had sub plans in place, not for when you're about to be out, but you had them in place already. So when the time came, you weren't scrambling and putting things in place. So this is about you being reactive. This is about you being proactive instead of reactive. And remember that succession is not just for continuity, but it is for your competitive advantage. So whatever you're deciding to do, you want to have that already in place. So when it's time and you're moving forward, or when it's time to adapt or adopt to something quickly, people and things are already in place and you're not scrambling and you're ready to jump on the next opportunity where your competitors may still be in the dark and still trying to figure it out. You're ready to move forward because you've already put these plans in place, and then your people know how to make those decisions sooner, quicker, faster. So as we wrap up, I want you to understand that your legacy isn't just your name on the door or at the bottom of the screen if you are remote or anything like that. But it is about how well your culture performs when you're not in the room or in the virtual room as well. So let's stop chasing reputation and start engineering replication. The replication is not a bad thing. That is why the industrial industry was so successful for so long, because there is something to being able to replicate success. So as we close, I am Dr. V, and thank you so much for listening and learning with me on the Remarkable Ed Show. And I hope you understand that leadership isn't developed, it is also designed. So be sure to take the Leadership Intelligence Index, or just drop your thoughts down below. And I would love to turn this monologue into a dialogue. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.